Have you just got one of these, or are you thinking about going into a store to try one out? Then this is the video for you. The Roland Aerophone Pro is an amazing instrument, but there's a huge amount of parameters to get used to early on. In this video, I'll take you straight to the ones that really count so that you can get the best possible start. We'll look at navigating the menu system. We'll look at how we check to see if we need a firmware update, how we set up the sensors, the bite center, the breath sensor, and the other controls on the back of the instrument. I'll show you how you can navigate your way through the preset tones or the user tones. And finally, just a very quick look at how we connect to something like a computer or an iPad, because I know you'll be itching to try out those external sounds as well. So if you're new to this channel, please subscribe and click the notification bell for when more videos come out. And if you find this information useful, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget, leave me a comment down below if you've got any questions, or if you want to share some advice that you've found is very useful, please put those in the comments below as well. Let's get into it. First things first, make sure you've got your Sling attached, and if you're going into a store to try one out, take your Sling with you. And remember, don't audition this instrument on these internal speakers. They're useful for a quick little go in the wings or just when you don't want to have to set up anything else. But if you're going to get a proper idea of this instrument, you need to plug in either headphones or an external amp. That's the best way to experience the Aerophone Pro. Now, we have basic controls here on the back. The scene control up and down selects our sounds, and we can select the category of sounds with the category knob down here. And then on the menu system, you press the menu button and you use the arrows left and right to navigate the various settings. Now, there are literally hundreds of settings. Thankfully, there's a little shortcut which I think is really important for you to know. Once you've pressed the menu button, now what you can do is press and hold an arrow key. Now this steps you through various settings and stops automatically at the next kind of chapter of menu settings. There are 4 basic menu chapters, as I would call them. There are the system controls, which is the ones we're going to look at in this video. Then you have scene controls for adjusting small things in each sound. You've got the assign controls for changing various controllers like the pitch bend wheel, the thumb button there, the breath sensor. And then you've got MIDI controls for external control. So that's a really good tip right off the bat. Press and hold the arrows when you're in the menu, and that will take you to the next kind of heading of different settings. Very useful. We're all used to mobile phones nowadays, and you know there are regular updates on most of them, and those are done automatically on some of our mobile phones. On the Aerophone, we need to check this out ourselves because Roland are really good at keeping up with various firmware updates well into an instrument's life. So do keep checking if you need an update. Even if you've just got a brand new instrument, check to see if there's an update. We do that by pressing the menu key, then press and hold the right arrow. When it stops, you want to just click once to the left. Now this will tell you what your current version of firmware is. Now don't worry, yours is probably different to mine. Check what that version is, and then I'll leave a link in the description below so you can go to the Roland website page and just see if there's been a new version there. If there is, follow the instructions on the web page carefully. Take your time. You'll need one of these, a USB memory stick. Now, it needs to be one with a USB-C connector on it. If you don't have one like that, I think you can get a little adapter to turn a regular USB stick into a USB-C stick, but you'll need one of those to do the update. You load the update onto the stick, you plug this into the Aerophone, you turn it on whilst holding a certain key press and follow the instructions really carefully. Now, at the end of that process, it's going to ask you to do a reset, which is just one more click to the left. And that's where it will come up and say, you can do two more clicks to the left, I'm sorry. You can do a factory reset. You do that every time you do a firmware update. It kind of flushes out the memory, makes sure there's no bugs in there. If you're in a store, by the way, I would go and do a factory reset because you don't know who's been in there trying the instrument out before you. Maybe they've made some settings that are not going to work well for you. Do a factory reset, then you know you're starting from scratch. Let's look closer at setting up the bite sensor. Now, before you do anything else, there's a couple of things you'll need to do to make sure that this instrument is set up properly. The first thing you're going to do is go to the setting Bite Calibration. Press Menu and then press Yes. Now what you'll do is you'll press and hold the reed against the mouthpiece as far as you can push it against the mouthpiece. When it's calibrated itself, it will say press menu to save, okay? Now that is calibrating the kind of internal sensor to what is its fullest reach, okay? So that's not set to how you want to play yet, it's just calibrating the sensor itself. To set your own bite point, what you need to do is blow a tone on the instrument and then simultaneously press both the upper octave key and the lower octave key. So as I blow a note, I'm going to press those two keys and it will set the pitch for me for my kind of normal bite position. Now, moving on from there then, the Aerophone has got two different bite controls in the settings. You can set it to either be the E-Wind setting or the sax setting. Now on the E-Wind setting, it's kind of going to give you vibrato and it's going to control it really nicely for you, but it's sort of semi-automatic because if you just lower your lip, you'll see that the instrument takes the pitch back up automatically for you. This is pretty much the same as an Akai instrument works. Personally, I prefer the saxophone bite setup where we can control the dip in pitch and also the rise in pitch, and it will follow exactly what we're doing with our lip. And also then we can get further into the settings and set how much the pitch will come down and how much the pitch will go up. I'll use my hand here to kind of demonstrate what I'm doing with my lip, and you'll hear it in the pitch. So I'm going to start at pitch and go down. And if I want to go up, so I think there's some really great control then. If you get that set up just how you want it to, it's going to be fabulous. The breath sensor is a little bit more straightforward to set up. You go firstly to breath curve. I would suggest you start off at M for medium. That gives you a pretty good balance between strength of air and how much your dynamics are going to control. If for some reason you want it to be a much lighter setup, you can move down into L1, L2, L3, L4. And if you want it a harder response, you can move up into the H. I would say don't go too far into those low settings because you're going to lose some control of the dynamics. Try it on the M setting first, I would suggest. And then there is a breath adjust. All this does is it sets how much breath do you have to put in before the note actually starts to speak. So if you want to blow really, really gently and get the sound out straight away, then set that number to very low. You can set it to auto as well. And if you want to blow a little bit more air before the sound speaks, set the number higher on the breath adjust. The Aerophone Pro has this great little button just underneath where you put your right hand thumb. It's kind of a pressure sensitive pad. Now, I think the way it's set up from the factory, it might just be a little bit too sensitive. And you'll sometimes find you're accidentally triggering it and getting all sorts of growl noises when you really don't intend to have them. So go ahead and select on the menu Thumb Pad Sense. Press menu and just lower that number a little bit. I think you'll find it controls a little bit easier if you drop that number down a little bit from the factory setting. Another useful little setting that you might want to tweak to begin with is the key delay. Now, when you're getting used to the keys on the instrument, you might find that you get a few glitches because your fingers maybe aren't moving quite as accurately as you would hope them to be moving. So go to the key delay setting on the Aerophone Pro, and if you increase that number, you'll find that it's a little bit more forgiving for you as you change your notes. It'll get rid of some of those nasty little glitches that might be coming out by mistake. As you get more proficient, you can lower that number down a little bit because then you'll be able to play faster. There are actually two different volume controls on the Aerophone Pro. There's one for the internal speakers and a separate one for what they call volume output. So you might just want to check both of those are set to how you like them. It might be easy to confuse those volume controls. And if you're sometimes blowing really hard, not getting much volume, maybe it's that output volume that isn't set right for you. The Aerophone Pro is capable of getting 7-8 octaves, but coming from the factory reset, you'll find it's only set to do 2 octaves up or 2 octaves down. Now, I much prefer to have that full range. So go to the setting which is called Octave Key. And again, press the menu button and select 3 octaves. If you're a beginner and you want to set it to lower than that, of course, feel free to do so. But to get that true range, go ahead and set it to the 3 octaves. There are literally hundreds of sounds on the Aerophone Pro. They come in 3 different categories: the user tones, the preset tones, and the favorite tones. Now, thankfully, we have this really handy category dial here to jump to certain categories of instruments. Once you've selected a category, you can cycle through the instruments with scene up or scene down. Now, what you're going to probably want to do quite early on is select some of your favourite sounds. So once you've selected a sound that you'd like to save, press and hold the menu button, and then select whether you want it to be a user memory or a favorite memory. Once you've done that, follow the instructions on the screen and you can save it to your own memory slot. Now, how do we recall those user tones? Well, thankfully, we haven't got to cycle through the whole lot of preset tones before we get on to the user tones. What we can do is, if you press and hold the down arrow on the scene side and then move the category dial, now you'll be directly selecting your user tones, which is really handy. And if you want to go immediately to one of your favourite tones, you can press and hold the up arrow and now the category dial will select 1 to 12 of your favorite sound memory slots there. By the way, as with pretty much everything on the Aerophone Pro, you can adjust how those settings are in the system settings as well. The transpose function has been something that's been a little bit complicated on some of the previous Aerophones. I think it's much better on the Aerophone Pro. You can choose in the menu system, straight away you'll see the transpose mode. Set it to either system or to scene. Now if you set it to scene, then each scene or each sound that you select can have its own transposition setting. So for instance, you might want your trumpet in B flat to automatically be set to B flat transposition, alto sax E flat. On the other hand, you might want to control all of the instruments with the transpose dial down here. Personally, I think this is the way to go. So leave that transpose mode on system. Now you'll be able to just freely control each sound with the transpose dial on the instrument, much more straightforward. Finally, we're just going to have a quick look at connecting to a computer or something like an iPad. Now, of course, the Aerophone Pro has got built-in Bluetooth, so I think most of you will be familiar with the setup there. You can select a Bluetooth device on either the iPad or the computer, and you'll see it's listed there as the Aerophone Pro. Just make your connection as you normally would. Now, one great feature on the Aerophone Pro is that this USB connector can take both MIDI and audio to a computer. Now, before you use it as an audio connection, what you'll need to do is go to the Roland website and download the USB driver. You can't do the audio side of things until you've done that. Install that onto your computer. You'll probably have to reboot your computer. Then this Aerophone Pro will show up as a new audio device. Now, something that kind of caught me out for a little while with this was that you have a setting in the menus which selects the USB driver as either being a vendor or generic driver. Okay? Now, to make this connection work with both MIDI and audio, you will have to select the vendor driver on the USB driver settings. Once you've changed that setting, you'll also have to turn the Aerophone off and turn it back on again. If you don't, that setting won't be taken up by the Aerophone. So if you're connecting to your computer, make sure that that USB driver is set to vendor. However, if you're connecting via the cable to something like an iPad, what you'll need to do is go back to that USB driver setting and set it to generic. Turn the Aerophone off and turn it back on again, then the setting will hold. Without doing that, you'll find that your Aerophone won't be recognised by something like an iPad, and you'll be scratching your head like I was, wondering how on earth do I make this connection. So that's as far as I want to go in this video. I hope you found it useful. I hope if you've just got your Aerophone Pro, you're loving it as much as I do. Don't forget, subscribe to my channel, click the notification bell. By the way, I have my own little Facebook group called iSax. If you search for that on Facebook, you need to answer the membership questions before you'll be allowed in. But it's a nice growing community where you can ask questions and you'll get odd little bits of extra advice from me on that Facebook group. So hopefully see you there soon. Don't forget, leave some comments down below. Enjoy your Aerophone Pro. See you in the next video.